Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone out there is well and enjoying the heat here in the UK. But we've joined us as ever for the weekly Iron Ceramite live stream podcast, episode 52. I think we're up to now for those keeping track. And it's just me tonight. So those that don't know, I'm Shane, um, part of the team, and obviously normally we might be chatting about releases, what games we've been playing, stuff like that. And I think that's what we're going to do today. So we're just going to have a bit of a dive into the new the new previews on Warhammer Community, what that probably means, and what we think about it, what I think about it, um, and then also maybe a quick run through of the battles so far, the games so far in 11th. I think between myself and John, we've had a fair few, probably coming up to double digits now, but certainly three that we where we've both played each other. I think it's actually four now in total where we've played each other, and we've got one more or another one coming up um, next Friday. So that's our next one. Um, all gearing up for our first event in 11th, one that's Gothic Games down in Canterbury. So a good tournament, especially for new players, new additions, trying new models, a very fun, engaging tournament setup. So we've got a free game tournament coming up towards the end of the month. So we're practicing for that, getting some reps in, trying slightly different lists and different dispositions. And so we'll have a quick chat about how that's gone. But with all of that said and done, let's have a quick look over at Warhammer Community. There's a couple of bits. Basically, the main one for me has been the big summer preview and how that's continued. And I think it was last week on the 26th of June. We got the update of all of the or some of the starter sets and then the terrain sets, but also first for GW, the ready painted terrain, which I think is going to be quite interesting. Um, yeah, we'll see how it transpires because obviously it's the first for GW in that regard. So it will be interesting to see how it sells, how it goes. Obviously, we've got a rough idea of the prices as well. So with a lot of these things, we know it's fairly punchy. But you know, we're this is the hobby. No one ever said it was going to be easy. So that's where we're up to from that point of view. So what I was going to say is let's start with the actual set itself and see what we've got from their preview. So as I said, this was the 26th of June. Big summer preview, new starter sets, ready painted terrain. And first up, the Warhammer 40,000 starter set. What what did I find interesting about this? So I was reading through it, and I know, like, obviously the Armageddon launch box is like one of those big marquee pieces that everyone wants. But actually, for starting the game, like I was looking at the starter set, and I depending on what you're after, this might actually be better value. Like, yeah, you're not going to get all of the same like exclusive miniatures, but you might get more of what you need, if that makes sense. So, as it's already said, you've got two complete combat patrol armies. So that in itself is a great place to start because you know it's a functional army list. So that's Space Marines and Orcs. So like Armageddon, but it won't have some of the exclusive stuff in there, like the Dakar rig, and maybe not the Marines with the little Armageddon totems that they've been running, but still pretty good. So, two combat patrol armies, Space Marines and Orcs, a core rules book. So that's it's always going to come in handy. Sometimes it's easier to find the rules and when you've got the physical book as compared to the app, but the app has been much improved for finding rules, I must say. 15 pieces of unpainted terrain. Nice. It's a good amount of terrain. You can see it on the image there as we scroll down. So a pretty good chunk of chunk of terrain to go down on the table, which is nice. 15 pieces, yeah, 15 pieces on the double-sided game board, fine. Like game boards are okay. Obviously, if you haven't got a mat, mats are also pretty good. Range rulers, fine dice, and a special starter guidebook to ease you into the game. Surprisingly useful when you first start out. But you can see there from the image, like you've got a nice spread, so looks like you've got looking into it, like a set of intercessors there. You've got the new land speeder, jump pack intercessors, always incredibly useful. So that's a really good utility unit. Lieutenant and librarian. So nice little mix there. And then the orc side, you've got your grots, what I think is a war boss, a couple of squads of boys, a biker, and another set of grots, and the weird boy. So a fairly good balanced starter list, which is exactly what it says you get, and good enough to build from as you go up from combat patrol to your 1,000 points to then getting yourself 2,000 points on the table ready to go. So I think that's a pretty good start, and actually a really nice box. Uh, um, Again, it's splitting it if you've got an orc friend, but also good level of terrain and nice terrain from the new set as well. So I actually think that starter set is quite good value if you either missed out on Armageddon or weren't necessarily feeling that in that way. So yeah, oh yeah, there's what's in it, so you can actually see there from that point of view. And it looks like you get 11 paint as well. So like just good. Yeah, I think it is good value all round in that regard. But yeah, a nice little combat patrol, and then yeah, there's the orc one. So yeah, it is indeed like the war boss, the weird boy, the death track. I don't know. I think it's the death track. A load of boys with a knob by the look of it, maybe two knobs, and then 10 grots. Keep it going, or Gretchen, depending on your flavour of calling it. It's a pretty good start set. Then various other versions or flavors of that. So introductory set. Interestingly enough, when I got back into Warhammer, so started on second edition, dropped off for a period like a lot of people, and then came back. I think it was eighth edition, and I actually got myself one of these, a set very similar to this. So it was a starter set, and it came with, I think it was like 5 Marines and a captain, and then what was it at the time? Necrons, so Necron warriors and a few other bits and pieces. Didn't come with any terrain, which is quite interesting. The box you actually got it in was the terrain. You could flip it over, and it made it look like the containers that you get everywhere now. But interesting, they're bringing back a bit of cardboard terrain. Do you know what? It's not the worst. Like, you know, if you want a quick way to make your battles more thematic, beyond like a tin of beans and you know, a bowl of fruit in the middle of your battle, these can be a bit more thematic. So I actually quite like it in that regard. And as I said, you're going to get stuff that you know you're going to make use of. Intercessors are always going to be useful. I mean, one or two squads is always good for most Space Marine players, and then same for the orcs. Any number of boys is going to be good from that point of view. So again, a nice little set. Obviously, the paint sets, classic stuff. Like, I don't mind any of the starter sets. Again, it's a good way to get into it. You learn a lot off the back of it. Here, you've got lots and lots of stuff that, you know, lots of colors that you will use again. Some that you're going to look at, think, oh, I need that, and then you get to use it and you're going to hate it. I'm looking at you, Corax White. White generally, bit of a nightmare. But good, you got your Agrax Earthshade wash, which is nice because that will hide a multitude of sins. Brush, fine, like it will do the job. This tool, this weird looking tool here, which is for mold lines, the bane of everyone's life, and then what looks like a fairly goodish pair of clippers, helping you get your your Ultramarines as painted here, tabletop ready. Not a bad way to play Space Marines. Obviously, maybe they pop up a bit too much for other people's tastes, but that's that. And then obviously the Orc one as well. Again, tabletop standard with this kind of split. Auric Flesh being the chosen green for the Orcs these days. And then we got the Combat Patrol Battle Zone. So create a Combat Patrol sized battlefield with this new terrain set. Features unpainted push fit scenery. Looks similar to the scenery you might get in that starter kit. Fold out game boards, terrain footprints, making setup really easy. So good, and like as I said, it does say Combat Patrol level of terrain. But really, like, if you've already got some terrain, and if you do there's the monthly magazine subscriptions you can get, they sometimes come with a bit of terrain. Like, this will add to that terrain collection quite quickly. And yeah, I actually like the Armageddon stuff. It's not too bad. Like, obviously it's the corner ruins as per usual, but then there's a few more interesting bits of terrain that they've thrown in, just to make it a bit more thematic. So that's quite nice. And obviously you can buy it in separate bits as well. So Manufacturer and Ruins, Galvanic Network, Cluster, all nice. But then the big one, the ready painted terrain, the stuff that came out, we were rumored, and then obviously it got leaked. So GW put out their kind of promotion for it early, and we've got a view of what that terrain now looks like. And do you know what? Like, painting terrain, depending on what type of hobbyist you are, painting generally can be quite a challenge, because it's the most time invested biggest block between getting your toys off the desk, off your working area, off the build area, and onto onto the battle. Actually painting them is the bit of time sink where everything goes. And then you add on top of that the idea that you have to paint the terrain as well, which is not even stuff that you want to be playing. Like, it's not part of your army. It's just additional stuff you need to paint. Having pre-painted terrain, I could see why this is something that people will really go for. And certainly when they announced it, I was like, oh, that's cool. I'd be interested in that. So, like, reading through the details, like, obviously full Armageddon themed battlefield in minutes, ready painted terrain set, nice. 28 pieces of terrain split between ruins, relays, capacitors, other elements, stuff like that, as well as a set of terrain area footprints. Nice. Easy as clipping them off the scoop, putting them together, then playing on a fully colored immersive battlefield. Very nice. Like, looks good. Like, as I said, I do like some of the thematic stuff here. It is always nice to see. Like, I like the OSL, the lighting that they do here. So all of the little lights glowing up and putting a glow out, like the dials and things like that, and the actual pipes. It's all nice from that point of view. Some poor trapped servitor type dude, like, all very, very good. Like, nice stuff. However, it is coming at a pretty hefty price tag. Like, GW's terrain as it stands is always pretty pricey anyway. So you're always, like, even for the stuff that isn't built grey plastic, you still have to pay a lot, relatively compared to what you want to be spending your money on. You still have to pay a lot for that terrain. So by making it pre-painted, they've definitely been able to really charge some fat stacks for it. Let's put it that way. I think it's coming at like 250 quid, something like that. So it is a chunky cost. It's an investment, like, in your hobby, that's for sure. I think if you're going to do it and you're going to drop that amount, you're one and done. You're unlikely to ever need to do it again or want to do it again. So it's up there as like a real luxury for those that want to get it. Not a bad idea though. It said it. Some people will buy it, other people it will take a while to get there. Then they've got a battle mat, so they're getting into the battle mat game. No longer like battle mat EU and places like that you see a lot of people that've got them. They've made their own, a fabric battle mat. So it'd be interesting to see what I mean by fabric. Is it like the mouse mat material, like the neoprene, which is quite nice. They're pretty good in terms of battle mats. It'd be interesting to see what kind of fabric and how thick it actually is. So it's a soft mat, so I think it probably is going to be like a mouse mat type size piece. Looks fairly nondescript. That's fine. It is what it is. And it being double-sided, I think that's quite nice as well. So all in all, as far as previews go for stuff that's coming out, this was pretty good. So I was quite impressed with the kits, quite impressed with the terrain. Will I be buying any of it? Maybe I might be tempted with the terrain. But we'll see. I've already got plenty of terrain. None of it's painted, so I don't know if I actually got more terrain. Well, tell a lie. It is painted, but it's painted in my quickest possible way, which is black or silver, normally black. Or actually, I did try Wraithbone. So like basically based with one color. Black is normally what I'd go for. I've recently been trying Wraithbone and then using another color like silver or Leadbelcher or the black itself to do a zenithal highlight. So spraying down from the top so it doesn't cover. It just gives it gives quite a good dusty look depending on which way you're doing it. Yes, it's not got any of the detail because I've not spent any time putting a brush on it to paint any of the detail, but it looks better than just having grey plastic. So it does the job in that regard. It does tend to make the battlefields look a bit dark and gloomy if it's all black, but that's what I've thrown in some of the Wraithbone stuff. But that actually works quite nicely as well. So that's what I do for my terrain. If I've got a load of painted stuff, it might look out of place. And then the Sunday preview articles, looking at that. So again, they're just going through showing the same things. So the start set's all very interesting. We've seen that before. The paint sets, the other bits and pieces. The getting started sets. Again, these look like they're pretty good value. A few of the Black Library books coming through. I'm sure they'd be pretty good. Devastation of Bold for those Blood Angels out there. A few Blood Angel stuff. Some stuff on Warhammer TV, and that's it. The other bit that I kind of passed me by, but where is it? It was the yeah, there we go. So the Orc preview. So this was also the 26th of June. And I watched those that watch all of the YouTube will know Auspex Tactics always does really good previews and updates of the stuff that's coming. He had a look. He went. I watched a video where he went through the Orc Codex and the video reveal, which is definitely worth looking at. Picked out a few interesting bits, which we'll talk about as we look at it. So obviously we've got the new truck, which I'm sure will go well with plenty of players that have got old trucks. It looks very orky. There's some very cool features on it. So that's quite nice from that point of view. I think like again, if I was an orc player, I'd be like this would be pretty cool, and I'd rather be painting up one of these than a load of boys, just because I think that's more interesting as a hobbyist. Unfortunately, orcs you do need lots of boys, so you are going to be painting lots of battle line. But I always try and mix it up with as much big stuff as possible. So that's quite good. He's quite good. Obviously, the new mech, which makes sense. There's a lot of mech stuff at the moment. The war boss, I think this is the one that's in Armageddon as well. Or is he in Armageddon? Maybe not. Anyway, the Orc boss with his lovely power claw, all very nice. The different ways of putting him together. Yeah, I think he is in Armageddon. Obviously, this is the Bad Moons variation with bigger axe. So quite cool all round. Codex Orcs, obviously, with all of the new rules in, new additions, 15 detachments, so plenty to mix and match, much more than 4 of it, more than what they've got right now. The big mech Dakar rigs, the mech guns, these are the standalone Armageddon units. So obviously you have got your War Boss, you've got your Weird Boy, you've got your Orc Captain equivalent, Pain Boy, Banner Knob, Dakar rig, the whole shebang. Command pack, I quite like these. So a nice way to keep the rules, stratagems, everything like quite close to hand, with a few more of the little markers. Like this edition, I don't want to say more than any edition, because 10th edition you actually had lots and lots of statuses that started popping up. But from the get-go of 11th, you've got that a lot of the time. So actually having those tokens for the various penalties and buffs is actually going to be quite useful. So I quite like that. And of course, Orc dice. Everyone needs dice. And then obviously the start of the Deathmire, so the new global campaign. Joining, like they did it with the last edition as well. Yeah, it was last edition where you had Space Marines and Tyranids. So just an ongoing narrative campaign where players can play, I think it's 1,000-point battles, Space Marines versus Orcs, and submit their scores or the results. And it feeds into an overall narrative called the Siege of Deathmire. I think as of today, the Imperial players are winning. So they've managed to push back the Orcs. So that will change what happens in that narrative. But the bit that I was going to talk about with this, which is slightly different because it's not actually in here. I think it was in the video. If you watch through it, if not, check out Auspector's one. The bit that he'd pulled up that was quite interesting was that the Orc burners. This is the bit that interested me, probably because I was like a flamer, and as someone that plays Thousand Suns, their warp flamers are always nice. Not swingy is the wrong word. D6 shots is pretty chunky, but the Orc burners, which have always been the Orc equivalent flamer, as far as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but is the Orc flavor of flamer, as it were, rather than being D6 like most flamers are currently. They've gone to 3 attacks with blast. So that's quite an interesting change, and it might signal how they're going to change flamers for all factions, which is interesting. Is it better or worse? I don't think, to be honest, I don't think there's that much difference to it. I like the fact that they're giving them blast. I think that's quite good. There'll still be torrent weapons. By giving them blast, that also means they can't fire into combat big gun style, which I also quite like, because I've always, John will tell you this, will roll his eyes that I'm going on about it again. I've always struggled with the idea of torrent weapons being one of those that you can fire into combat. So like if you've got it on a vehicle and you're firing it into combat, like always struggled with it to a little degree. But if suddenly they're giving all of those weapons blast, then you're not going to be firing them into combat. So it could be interesting in that regard, but it depends whether they just do it on flamers. Obviously, Death Guard players, they have like plague spitters, something like that, as well as their like they've got hand flamers as well on the Death Shroud, but they're not flamers, they're like plague flamers. All of those things, because they're not flamers, will they get that changed like the burner boys? And like, would that happen with warp flamers? Could be interesting, because that then has a, if I'm running my minimum squad size, five rubrics with warp flamers, rather than having 5d6 shots, I'm going to actually have 15 shots. And if I'm going into a unit of 5 or more, then that goes up to 20 shots. In a unit of 5, if it's a unit of 10, then it goes up to 25 shots. So it's like, and they're also hitting, so they're straight onto the wound roll. And in this edition, where you ignore cover, and therefore AP is even more impactful, you're actually, I actually think that those flamers become more reliable. Whereas when they're D6 shots, you can roll high, but you can also roll low. And this kind of evens that out a little bit. So if that is a signal that that's the way that the flamer is going to evolve into this edition, then I'm quite interested to see the next codex off the ramp, as it were, which we're assuming is going to be Space Marines, but see what that next codex is to see if that rule, if that changes for like the Infernus squad in the Space Marines, then we know that the likelihood is all flamers are going to go that way, which will be interesting in itself. So that was the big bits that I thought from the previews and the things we've seen so far. That's kind of what I've seen that's been interested to talk about in that regard. I think the other bits I was going to talk about is some of the results we've had so far. So myself and John, obviously I'm as well as being so I play three factions: Space Wolves, Necrons, and Thousand Sons. And John is a Death Guard player, but about to start Orcs as well. So far this edition we've had 4 games, all Space Wolves versus Death Guard, and it's 2-2. So about right for the odds in that regard, like 2-2 in terms of how we're going. Because of the nature of Space Wolves and Death Guard, they've been fairly similar, like in terms of primaries and dispositions. So it tends to have been like Taken Hold or Purge for the Space Wolves, and Disruption, I want to say, and Taken Hold for the Death Guard. And I think the first game we played, see if I can get the results here. The first game we played, I had quite a narrative list, because I just wanted to try all of the Space Wolves. I was like, let's play all of the Space Wolfy units and see how we go. And John, yeah, so that was it. So I was playing, I actually played Disruption in that one because I was playing Veterans of the Fang, which is the Grey Hunter detachment, alongside um, Saga of the Great Wolf, the Logan detachment, effectively. And it was, as I said, it was fine. It was a good game. John was playing his Contagion Engines and Poxwalker detachment. So pretty nasty in that the Contagion Engines get assault, so they can move forward, they can blow stuff up. They're nasty anyway, and then obviously the Shamble Rot, the Poxwalker one, so he's got a conveyor belt of Poxwalkers that continually come onto the table. He romped home 88-48 in that one. So that was that. Yeah, tough game Space Wolf wise. I didn't take on any of the advice that a lot of YouTubers were saying, which is when you're getting into 11th, start with the lists you were running in 10th. Start with the list you were running in 10th because you know what they do. They haven't changed that much. Fair enough. I think that was the right advice. So I did that and I went back to Saga of the Beast Slayer, and it was Saga of the Beast Slayer and then Champions of Fenris. I think that's the one. Yeah, I think it was Champions of Fenris. Which is so the Champions of Fenris is it's a pretty good all round 1 point detachment. Gives a few good strats like mortal wound, like it gives a mortal wound save, which I find is always useful. But yeah, Saga of the Beast Slayer against the same list, John's side, near enough. And this time, when it ended 76-74 in favor of the Space Wolves. So that one much closer. And I think again it was probably because the primary, which was for purge, is like you had to kill things off of objectives. So you got points for taking objectives that you didn't have at the beginning. So you almost wanted a thing where you moved onto an objective, moved off of it, move back on, move off, move back on, but kill the thing that your opponent puts on that objective. And I was able to do that pretty regularly as the game went on. So that one worked out quite well. Then um, this time again, same as before. So Legends of Saga and Song and Saga of the Beast Slayer. Saga of the Beast Slayer is the one where you get lethal hits against vehicles, characters, monsters. And if you kill your tally, you get it against all units. Basically, with the Death Guard list, that means you're getting lethals against everything apart from the Poxwalkers. So actually, it's a really good detachment. And the Legends of Saga and Song is the one that gives, I think that's the one that's good for the Wolfguard Terminators. So it gives them +1 to charge rolls. So just a bit more reliable when you're coming in out of Deep Strike or just generally. So that one was pretty good. That one was also Purge. I think it was Purge against Taken Hold, possibly, or Purge against Disruption. Purge against Disruption. So that's the one where you have to try and booby trap terrain around the board. And that one finished 95-39 to the Space Wolves. So again, what we're finding with 11th is that once you get ahead, you can really start maxing your score quite quickly. And then it's very, very hard to catch up from the other side. And then just Saturday morning, that was it. So not too long ago, yesterday morning, we had our fourth game, which was again Space Wolves. This time Saga of the Beast Slayer, but back to the Champions of Fenris, because I did like that additional stratagem to give me the feel no pain against psychic, or not against psychic, against mortal wounds. So it's good from that point of view. Same list, slightly different because this time John was taken hold because he was Virulent Vectorum. So that's the sticky objectives one. And this time he was running a real beast of a list that we'd actually seen on the Horsepex Tactics video, that had gone 5-0 at a tournament. And it was basically you had Mortarion, you had the Demon Prince, you had a block of 6 Death Shroud from Lord of Contagion, a block of 3 with a Lord of Contagion, Typhus running solo, Tallyman running solo, 3 Mephitic Blight Haulers, and then 3 squads of 10 Poxwalkers. So a low unit count and a lot of investment on big brick type units. And as like John was saying during the game, like it felt like a list that needed a go turn, and I think it was his. So I went first, and I think by the end of my turn two, I was up to 33 points, so scored quite quickly. And then John's turn two, he decided that was the go turn because we were both effectively trying to fight over the middle objective. And I think whoever got their big charge turn off first was going to win. And that was John in turn two. He had effectively the 4 charges that he needed to go off all went off. He rolled a 10, a 10, a 10, and a 9. So everything got to where it needed to go. And if you've ever played against things like the Demon Prince, things like 6 Death Shroud of a Lord of Contagion charging in with lethal, sustained, and lance, you know they're going to pretty much ruin almost everything's day. And then on top of that, you've got Multi and Typhus making their charges as well. So he had his big go turn. He picked up everything he needed to pick up. And then, unfortunately, in my reply back, I had 2 units that came deep striking in, Logan and the Terminators, and some jump back intercessors. Needed them to get in really. And you know, when you're relying on a charge to happen and like a deep strike charge to happen, you know you're up against it anyway. They didn't go off. So at that point, um, my other big unit that had gone in, which is Ragnar and 10 Blood Claws, they're kind of fighting for their life in the center. They're always going to get picked up. Like I did manage to take out a lot of the Death Shroud, but then even then you've still got a Lord of Contagion, you've got another squad of Death Shroud, you've got the Demon Prince, and you've got Mortarion. It's just too much to get through. Too much high toughness, high invuns, and then with strats that allow you to get wounds back and dish out mortal wounds. So that one finished 61.99. And again, that was kind of showing how it went, like up until the end of that up until turn two, it was pretty even. We were 33-32, but because of how strong that turn two was, I then had no scoring pretty much for the next two turns. I got some in the fifth round, but it meant that I could only ever get to that 61. I couldn't score any primary, and John was able to run round scoring all of those primary. And because he was taking hold, that fit really well into what he was trying to do from a disposition point of view. So really interesting game. Learned a lot from it as always. Rough, a lot of bad stuff was happening. And then we've got our new next game on Friday. And I was looking at lists and things like that. And you hear it first. This is the words we've always talked about, or I keep talking about, Year of the Wolf. I was like, no, I'm going to focus on my Space Wolves. I'm going to get them painted. As we get closer and closer to that tournament, I'm looking at the list that I'm trying to play, and I'm like, I still haven't finished the jump pack intercessors. I still haven't done the head takers. I still haven't done the official head Wolfguard battle leader. At the moment, I'm running my assault intercessors as blood claws. Don't feel great about that. I'd like to be running the actual blood claw models. Same with the Terminators. I'm running them as Wolfguard. I've got the old Wolfguard, but obviously the new Wolfguard have got different loadouts now. So I want to refresh them too. And I'm not going to get them all done for July. And then obviously we've got the London Grand Tournament in September. So the idea originally at the start of the year was I want to run the Space Wolves for those two tournaments. Now looking at what I've got painted, I'm like, okay, is that realistic? Can I hobby that way to get there? The other option is, and shudder to say it, but the other option is the Thousand Suns, a blow off the dust, quite apt for Dusty boys. Blow off the dust, take them off the shelves, and start running them now so that I can get the reps in and understand what's happening. Bearing in mind, as per every edition, straight out the gate, they look really good. They are going to get nerfed. So I've got to bear that in mind that a nerf is coming for the Thousand Suns. I could run Necron. I was running them at the end of last edition, end of 10th. I feel like they were almost too good. I can leave them for a bit. It's fine. We'll come back to them in due course. They're fun to play, but I want a bit of interesting challenge. So it might be that for the Friday game, I actually end up running, and you heard it here first, I actually end up running a Thousand Suns list because at least I know I've got all the units painted that I need painted because I actually ran Thousand Suns at the London Grand Tournament last year, and that's why I knew I had all of the units painted that I need painted. So maybe that's what I do just because then I know I've got everything painted that needs painting. And we can see how we go there. Plus, I get to take advantage of things like the psychic keywords now and try out some of the new detachments that the Thousand Suns have got. So Friday will be another experimental list, I feel, and we'll see what happens with that. If that one works, then maybe I'll keep playing it until we get to that tournament. If it doesn't, maybe I'll have a look at tweaking it a little bit. Maybe we go back to the Rubricae Phalanx or even the Grand Coven, and Magnus comes out of his cage. He's a lot of points this edition, though, so we'll have to wait and see. He does become a bit of a all or nothing if you've got Magnus in the list because everyone tries to kill him, and if they do in like turns 1 or 2, then you probably hasn't done enough to justify his cost, and you're probably not going to get too far from a Thousand Suns player point of view. But I think that might be what's happening. So we'll see if John watches this before we get to Friday, and I get an outraged message from him being like, "I can't believe you've given up on the Wolves." I haven't given up on the Wolves. I just haven't painted them as quickly as I've wanted to. But it may be time that their arch nemesis, the Thousand Suns, come out and have a bit of a dabble in 11, just so I can see how they're playing. So I think that will be us for this evening. Obviously, tune in next Sunday when John will be back. Hopefully, Glenn will be back. And we'll be able to maybe talk about how that battle went on Friday and whether the Thousand Suns did come out to play. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your evening, and yeah, do tune in next time where there'll be more uneducated chat around 11th. We'll look at the previews as always, and maybe we'll give you an update on how we've played and whether or not there's any funky rules that have come up that we've inevitably played wrong. But otherwise, have a good rest of your evening, rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next week.